Most men who quit riding after 40 will tell you it was the right call. Responsible, mature, the smart thing to do. They've said it so many times they almost believe it. If you quit riding after 40, or if you've been telling yourself you will someday, what I'm about to say was written for you. But here's what they don't say out loud. They don't talk about the morning they sold the bike and felt something leave with it. They don't talk about the years that followed, competent, reliable, completely hollow. They don't talk about the man they used to be, before everyone needed them to be something else. This video isn't about motorcycles. It's about what happens to a man when he stops choosing himself, and whether it's already too late to come back. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what goes silent inside a man when the bike disappears. Why the people who told you to quit weren't wrong about the risk, but were completely wrong about the cost. And why some men get it back, and some men don't. You didn't quit riding because you were weak. You quit because you were responsible. There was a wife who worried, kids who needed you around, a mortgage, a career you'd spent years building. The warnings came with logic attached, reaction times, healing rates, statistics that all pointed the same direction. And you listened, because that's what men like you do. You weigh the cost, you make the call, you move on. Except you didn't fully move on. You moved forward, but something stayed behind. Something you told yourself you'd come back for someday. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because the people who told you to quit weren't your enemies. They loved you. They were scared for you. That's what makes this so hard to look at directly. Psychologists have a name for what happens when a man spends years living inside roles other people need him to fill. They call it identity foreclosure. The gradual narrowing of who you are, down to only what's useful to others. It doesn't feel dramatic. That's the danger. It just feels like being responsible, being mature, being fine. But something goes quiet inside. Not broken, not depressed, just quiet. Like a part of you that used to want things stopped asking. Like the version of you that had opinions about his own life started deferring instead. And the bike was one of the last places that version of you lived. The version that chose things because he wanted them. Not because they made sense on paper. Not because they were practical. Not because they were approved. Because they were his. But here's what nobody measured when they listed the risks of riding. Nobody counted the cost of the alternative. Think about what you traded when you stopped. You traded the 1 hour that was completely yours. The hour where no one could reach you. Where no one's needs were sitting in the passenger seat. Where your body and your mind were finally in the same place at the same time. Research on psychological ownership, the sense that something is genuinely, unconditionally yours, shows it's not a luxury. It's a fundamental human need. And men in their 40s are often profoundly starved of it. Their time is allocated. Their energy is spoken for. Even their hobbies have quietly become things they do for other people. The bike was the one thing that couldn't be repurposed, couldn't be scheduled over, couldn't be turned into something useful. That irreducibility wasn't a small thing. For a lot of men, it was the whole thing. Now here's the part most videos won't say. Because it doesn't make riding look noble, it makes it look necessary. Some men quit riding. They're fine. They find other things. They adapt. They fill the space with something else that works. But some men quit riding, and something doesn't come back. Not because of the riding, because the riding was the last honest conversation they were having with themselves. Every time they geared up before sunrise, that was them saying, I still exist outside of what I owe other people. Every time they felt that engine settle into idle, that was them saying, I am still here. When that stopped, the conversation stopped. And a man can go years, decades, being competent and present and completely unexpressed, being fine in a way that slowly hollows you out, surrounded by people, invisible to himself. That's not a midlife crisis. That's a man who stopped choosing himself so long ago he forgot he ever had the option. And this is where the two types of men separate: the ones who came back and the ones who convinced themselves they didn't need to. The men who came back don't describe it as recapturing youth. That's not what it feels like. They describe feeling present, like their body and their mind were finally in the same room after years of one of them being somewhere else. One man, 48 years old, youngest kid just left for college, described his first ride back as the first time in 2 decades. He made a decision with no one else's welfare factored into the calculation. Just, I want to go this way, so I will go this way. He said the version of himself he found out there on that road, the one that predated every role he'd ever taken on, had been very patient. That patience is the thing nobody talks about. That version of you isn't gone. He's just been waiting. So the question isn't whether you still think about riding. You do. The question is what you're going to do with that. The warnings about age and reaction time and having too much to lose. They're not wrong about the risk. Motorcycles are dangerous. That's just true. The people who issued those warnings love you, and they weren't wrong. But they were measuring the cost of riding. They were not measuring the cost of not riding. The cost of another decade of coasting, of being competent and present and completely unexpressed, of being fine in a way that slowly hollows you out. You didn't quit riding because you stopped caring about your life. You quit because you were trying to protect it. But a life that has no room in it for the man you actually are, that's not a life being protected. That's a life being managed. Next, we're going into something even most riders won't admit. What the machine actually does to a man's brain after years in the saddle. Not what you think it does. What it actually does. That one's coming. Most channels will tell you what you want to hear. This one won't. If that's what you're looking for, subscribe. Drop a comment below. What was it that finally made you go back? Or what's still holding you back? Tell us the real reason. We actually want to know. Ride what's true.